Hello, my lovely. Are you ready to start chapter 22 of The Swifts? Tickle. Okay, I'm ready. In the afternoon room, which was not so large as the morning room or the evening room, over 30 relatives were gathered. Fauna stood in their center, clutching one of Aunt Inheritance's timetables in hand and frowning. So, in the absence of the others, I thought perhaps we could shift the mock-up around the schedule, said Fauna. We had a talk from Pamplemousse on concealed weaponry planned for right now, only Pamplemousse is, well, dead, and Aunt Inheritance is, well, I don't want to say missing, but we can't find her. Shenanigan wondered if maybe the reunions were actually just an excuse to prune the family tree. She looked to Earth, expecting to see Worry. She got an eye roll instead. She's probably in the secret room you didn't tell any of us about, they said dryly. Phenomena and Felicity had taken positions as far from each other and from Shenanigan as they possibly could get. They were each making a show of not looking in the other's direction, which didn't leave much to look at but the floor and the ceiling. Aren't you mad at me too? Muttered Shenanigan. Earth shrugged. A bit, but I don't know you well enough to be properly mad at you. Your sisters know you really well. They paused. You know, sometimes hyena cubs will kill their siblings so they can get bigger and stronger. Well, that's horrible. What's that got to do with anything? Nothing really. I was just wondering how much Grand Uncle Vile knew about hyenas. People had begun to warm up. Flora cracked her knuckles. Peak smoothed his mustache. Earth looked dubious, but when Shenanigan wrote her own name on a slip of paper, Earth wrote theirs too and dropped it into the hat Fauna had found. A mock-up is, in its simplest terms, an insult contest. The players put their names into a hat, bucket, or other receptacle and stand in a circle. The referee, in this case Fauna, pulls out two names and the players begin a battle of words, a one-to-one match of wits. The first person to run out of ideas or start laughing is the loser. Anyone can play. It is, after all, a remarkably simple game, but there are a few rules. No swearing, no foul language, nothing personal, said Fauna. Remember, you don't try to actually stab someone in a fencing match, and you don't try to really hurt anyone here. My word is final. If I say you're out, you're out. It won't be the same without Pamplemousse, said Thespian morosely. He always had the most creative insults. He once called me a coup de lion. Aunt Dither smiled. I don't even know what that means. It means Lionheart, Felicity grumbled. I'm not even sure he was French, you know. I speak French. I asked him to pass the salt yesterday, and he told me it was in July. Well, French or not, we should dedicate this mock-up to his memory. Fauna shook the hat and moved into the circle. Winner of each match takes on the next contestant. We'll keep going until the last Swift standing, so keep some good jibes in your back pocket. Okay, first up, Tintimbula and Covetous. The two women stepped forward. You're a puttock, said Tintimbula, straight out of the gate, a seizing, grasping, witch-fingered harridan. And you're a screaming kettle, a braying trumpet of gibberish, and the world's most boring banshee. Tintimbula's lips twitched upward, and Covetous giggled. Oh, come on, what was that? bawled Fauna. Both of you cracked up, so you're out. Next up, Flora and Gauche. It was soon clear that Flora was excellent at this game. She wiped the floor with her first three challengers, and though she almost lost her cool when Fortissimo called her a Duke of Limbs, she sent him howling with flat-footed stamp crab. As she blazed through her challengers, However, Shenanigan noticed that the insults directed at Flora were somewhat sharper than those she was dealing out. "You're a waste," said Aunt Jilt. "A wizened, stunted, wind-blown shrub." "That's fine, because you're a pestilent, meat-breathed plague taxi. You're a desperate circumstance, an idling fopdoodle with nothing to recommend her. And you're a bitter, dried-up lemon rind, a purse-mouthed gnash-gab." "Pull back a bit, you two," warned Fauna. "You've got a sheep's name and the sense of a goat. Then you can share a pasture because you're a miserable cow," snapped Flora. The crowd hollered, and Jilt, red-faced and spluttering, couldn't come up with a retort. She was jeered out of the circle. Fauna eyed her sister disapprovingly. "You both crossed the line there," she warned. "Consider this a yellow card." Flora nodded, but the grin on her face said she thought it had been worth it. Her next challenger was Peek. "You're a gold-guzzling gobmoosh," she began. "And you're a tin woman," said Peek, "with a ball of wire wool for a heart." "You six-fingered eel-tongued filcher of happiness," retorted Flora. "You consort with warthogs and make an ally of every slimy thing." The audience laughed. "You are utterly, completely, wholeheartedly—" Out of the corner of her eye, Shenanigan noticed the door ease open. Daisy ducked into the room, waved her hand at Flora in an urgent gesture, and ducked out again. Flora suddenly looked flustered. "Perfect," she said. Peek blinked. Yes, I meant to say that. You're a right marvel, just swell, peachy, the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas, proper good." She blinked. I have to go, excuse me." And she hurried from the room after Daisy. "We should follow them." Shenanigan jumped. Phenomena had just appeared at her elbow, her glasses glinting curiously after Flora. Shenanigan glared. "What do you mean, we? I don't have a head for investigation, remember? I can't be trusted. And anyways, you said Daisy can't possibly be suspicious. There's no evidence other than all the evidence." She could feel her sister's frustration. "Good." Peek lost to Ferrier lost to Urf, and Urf lost to Shenanigan when she made them laugh with "unscrupulous badger." It was the first uncomplicated fun Shenanigan had had all weekend until Fauna called her next challenger. "Felicity!" Fauna waved the slip of paper in the air, and Felicity shuffled reluctantly into the circle. "I'd rather not play against her," she said. At exactly the same moment, Shenanigan said, "I'm not playing against her. She's a fun vampire. She's a fun vampire. She sucks the fun out of everything." Felicity glared. "Yeah? Well, you just suck. You're like a mosquito. All you do is buzz around, irritating people." People laughed, but Fauna looked uneasy. "Felicity, if you were a color, it would be beige," said Shenanigan nastily. "If you were a food, you'd be a mashed potato. If you were a book, you'd be The History of Paint Drying, Volume 3. And if you were a food, you'd be a week-old prawn, because you make everyone sick," Felicity retorted. "And by the way, just because I didn't tear around with you and Phenomena pretending to be a detective—" "No, because you're too busy mooning about sewing dresses and being wistful and boring." "Hold on," said Phenomena, shoving her way into the circle. "I'm not having you besmirch my investigation." Fauna held up a hand. "Only two in the circle at a time, please." "I'd rather be boring than selfish or a liar," snapped Felicity. "What do you mean, your investigation?" demanded Shenanigan. Fauna's yellow card went unnoticed. The audience, far from objecting, jeered delightedly at this flagrant disregard for the rules. The sisters barely noticed. The anger crackled between them. Phenomena whirled on Shenanigan. "Yes, my my investigation. You withheld evidence. You've been slipshod and reckless. You're careless with evidence, and you haven't followed the proper method of detection at all. And half of the time, you don't even remember the details of the case. And you've been lying to us, said Felicity. Yeah, you've been pretty devious and underhanded, Shenanigan. No one but her sisters knew how much that hurt, and Shenanigan was suddenly sharply angry. This is the three sisters with, I forget, is it Flora or Fauna who's in charge of the game? It looks like it's quickly getting out of hand. No one? All right. So what? Neither of you even cared about the reunion. You weren't looking forward to it like I was. I've been working on my map for months. Felicity made a strangled noise. I'm sorry. Did our aunt's attempted murder ruin your weekend plans? Shut up, Felicity. Phenomena and Shenanigans shouted together. There was a flash of red as Fauna held up the disqualifying card. She might as well have been waving a red flag at three bulls. The audience wasn't laughing anymore, but they had the horrified glee of bystanders watching a building demolition. You keep talking about Aunt Schadenfreude, but what exactly have you done to help? Phenomena rounded on Felicity. You just turned up during our investigation, insult us, tell us to give up, and then storm off. Because you don't know what you're doing. Someone has to at least try to keep you safe. Well, you're not Mum. Felicity flinched. No, I'm not. You can tell because I'm actually here, not off on the other side of the world, unfortunately. Shenanigan's throat felt hot. Well, I wish you were, she choked out. You hate this family, and you hate us, and you hate... Listen, said Earth, pushing between them. This isn't helping, okay? Maybe you should all calm down. And maybe you should keep your nose out, snapped Felicity. Earth recoiled. I know you're everyone's new best friend, but you're not our sibling, so you can't just... That's enough. Fauna's voice rang with authority, and the children shut up at once. Felicity put her hand over her mouth and looked at Earth as if she wanted to shove her words back in. She was out of the door before any of them could speak. Phenomena stared fixedly at the wall, her ears crimson. I don't have time for this, she muttered. She took a leaf out of Felicity's book and took her leave. The other participants of the mock-up began to drift away, chuckling as if the argument had been the height of entertainment. Earth tapped Fauna's elbow. So I'm an only child. Is this sort of thing normal? With impressive efficiency, Fauna ushered any stragglers out of the afternoon room. She sat the remaining two children down and acquired a pot of tea. Shenanigan busied herself with tearing her Battenberg cake into pieces so Earth could have the marzipan. She felt raw and uncomfortable. Do you know, said Fauna conversationally, I think your sister is one of the most interesting people in the house. Shenanigan couldn't really taste the Battenberg. Phenomena? I suppose she's very clever and... Oh, not Phenomena, though she is very interesting too. I meant Felicity. Fauna offered more tea to Earth, who accepted gratefully and dipped their marzipan into it. I spent some time talking to her yesterday. Have you ever asked her why she wants to design clothes? Fauna didn't wait for her to answer. Felicity says that clothes help a person show the world who they are. She wants to help people be themselves. Shenanigan kicked idly at the carpet and refused to say anything. That's cool, said Earth. It's one of the reasons I took up knitting. Couldn't find a parrotfish jumper anywhere. Having a mundane name is hard, as Flora can attest, Fauna went on. You saw how people spoke to my sister during the mock-up. Felicity is clever and kind. She likes mazes and code breaking. She taught herself French, and the family treats her like she's always been boring. She hates us, mumbled Shenanigan. Fauna seemed to consider this, her eyes steadily over the rim of her teacup. I think some people in our family have treated her very unfairly, and that's what she hates. Felicity just wants to be seen, as we all do. Fauna watched Earth mopping up crumbs with a finger. I've been meaning to ask, when did you start going by Earth? Earth blinked and then studied their crumb with greater intensity. About a year ago. I'm having trouble getting people to use the new name, though, especially my gran. Fauna nodded. How come? Well, I haven't told her in so many words, said Earth, that I want to change it. It feels so big, and you know what she's like, how much she believes in the dictionary and stuff. I'm not sure she'd think we're allowed to go about changing things. Fauna snorted. Do you know, I think that's a load of horse feathers, she said. The idea that a book can tell you who you're going to be. But so many of us match, Earth pointed out. Sometimes it all feels a bit inevitable. Shenanigan thought of the gravestones in the cellar. Aunt Inheritance's white-gloved hand on the dictionary's case, Phenomena's neat list of check marks. Fauna chewed her lip for a minute. Got the right angle today. You know, when I was born, everybody thought I was a boy. The doctors said I was a boy. My parents bought me boy clothes. I had to learn to talk in order to explain the situation, and they were terribly embarrassed by their mistake. Something similar happened to me, Earth said. No one asked who I was either. They smiled. Something bloomed between Fauna and Earth, an understanding. What made you choose Earth? Asked Fauna. It's an old word for plot of land. They hesitated, then went on. I picked it because anything can grow there. Fauna laughed delightedly. Oh, I love that. Yes, that suits you down to the ground. No pun intended. I'm not candor. Do you mind if I ask, was it difficult getting people to listen to you? Asked Earth, fiddling with their cuffs. Sometimes, Fauna sipped her tea. There will always be people who think they know you better than you know yourself. But I quickly learned that they don't matter. The people who love you are the people who listen. Flora got into more than one fight on my behalf when we were younger, she chuckled. She was always the angry one. So you're saying? I'm saying if you want to change your name, change it. You have people in your corner, right, Shenanigan? Shenanigan nodded and brandished her fists. Earth laughed. Their eyes were wet. I just don't know if Gran will let me. Your Gran doesn't get a say in who you are. No one in the world makes that decision but you. Earth and Fauna smiled at each other. The moment they were having seemed very important and did not include Shenanigan. That was fine. That was, in fact, wonderful. Besides, Uncle Maelstrom was peeking around the corner and looked as if he was about to call her name. She slipped away before he could tread on the moment. Before he could. By the way, I love your jumper, she heard Fauna say as the door closed. Uncle Maelstrom chivied her down the hall to quieter and quieter parts of the house. He walked quickly, and for every one of his massive strides, Shenanigan had to take 3. Eventually, she gave up all pretense of walking and broke into a jog. What's going on? She asked. Do you have your map with you? He whispered as they headed out of the nearest set of stairs. It was weird seeing him move quietly. It made Shenanigan uneasy, and she stopped. She thought of the crumpled suspect list in her pocket and what Felicity had said about not automatically crossing off her uncle and cook. She thought about Maelstrom's interest in the map and the way his eyes bounced from one door to another, like a pinball. Uncle Maelstrom, said Shenanigan, I consider you an ally. Thank you, he said seriously. But recently you've been behaving very suspiciously and not like the uncle I know. And because you've behaved suspiciously, I am now suspicious. Why did you encourage me to make a map of the house? Why did you ask me not to tell anybody about it? And why were you so fidgety in the freezer yesterday? Well, I can explain. Good, then explain, because I'm not going anywhere with you until you have. Shenanigan folded her arms and planted her feet firmly apart and fixed Maelstrom with her best piratical gaze. Her uncle sighed. That's what I'm trying to do, Shenanigan. You need to come with me. It's time we told you everything. He turned on the blank stretch of wall beside him, the wall Shenanigan had marked on her map with the big red question mark, and gave it a series of complicated knocks and taps. There was a click, and then the wall slid open. Aunt Inheritance poked her head out into the corridor, eyes wide. Her gaze darted between them and past them, and with a sharp breath, she hauled them inside. That's they've been looking for her, right? Ooh, that's a good spot to end. At the end of chapter 22 on page 219. All right, my love. Kisses until we read again.